In the past couple of months, I have been obsessively watching and keeping up with the community around the cable television show 911. It's a procedural drama that follows the calls that various first responders take in California, where we follow various firefighters, paramedics, cops, and 911 dispatchers. BUDDIE has been an insanely popular ship since season 2, when firefighter Eddie Diaz was first introduced into the show, and we saw him meet Evan Buckley, otherwise known as Buck, a firefighter we've been following since season 1. They have God knows how many fics on AO3, and I see stuff about them on my Tumblr all the time, and if you still use Tumblr in 2025, you might know what ship I am talking about, even if you have not watched the show. Many fans are awaiting to see if in the second half of season 8 that has resumed airing as of this video's recording will finally be the time when the showrunners will make BUDDIE canon. Fans of the show systematically ask themselves this question every season, if this will finally be the time where they will make BUDDIE canon. But I think as the show goes on, more and more people are becoming impatient to the answer of this question. Although BUDDIE isn't even my favorite ship on the show, I feel just as confused as many hardcore BUDDIE shippers as to why exactly these two are not together. Every other main character in the show has had an obvious endgame pairing since season 2, and Buck and Eddie are the only characters who have never been given a satisfying pairing in the show. Many of the relationships Eddie and Buck are thrown into are often underdeveloped, or with characters who are introduced to obviously only exist as their love interest. Like when Buck was paired with the death doula, Natalia, who we saw for a few episodes sparingly. She wasn't really integral to any main plots of the show really, and ended up breaking up off screen because that's just how irrelevant a lot of these pairings are. And when they did break up, nobody cared. Or sometimes the pairings just make absolutely no sense whatsoever, like when Eddie begins dating a doppelganger of his dead ex-wife for a few episodes. Either way, it's obvious to see why people ship these two. They have one of the strongest relationships in the show and have great chemistry together, and are often seen doing domestic-y things together, more so with each other than any actual love interest either of them have ever had, like taking care of Eddie's son Christopher together. Buck and Christopher are really close, and Buck really cares deeply for Christopher. They do look like two dads taking care of their son. Then there's the fact that when they first met, Buck was quote-unquote mad at Eddie for being too attractive or something, or Eddie having a panic attack when somebody assumed that him and his girlfriend at the time were married and shortly broke up with her afterward. I mean, I know that dating and being married are two different things, but somebody literally just assumed the person he was in a relationship with was, in fact, the person he was in a relationship with. What is scary about that? In the show was because of the history he had with his ex-wife that kind of made him a little bit scared of commitment or whatever, but I think a lot of the fandom jokes that Eddie's repressed sexuality made him faint at the idea of somebody thinking he was with a woman. There are just overall a lot of reasons why narratively BUDDIE makes sense, and it would just seem to wrap up a lot of loose ends in both of their characters. Also, from a writing perspective, it just seems so easy. Their backstory and chemistry is there. They've pretty much co-parented a child together. They're entirely concerned about each other all the time, and fans are pretty into it. They don't need to create or develop any new characters to pair them with like they've tried to do numerous times with both men, just to have the relationships anticlimactically fizzle out or end up being kind of toxic. So why haven't they paired them together yet? I honestly cannot figure it out for the life of me. Maybe a couple of decades ago, you'd have an easy answer. They don't want to feature a gay couple in a popular cable TV show. That would be a very understandable answer because even if the writers wanted to do so, network execs or whoever may not allow it for fear that they would alienate a lot of their audience who may not be super okay with gay ships appearing on their TV shows. But it's 2025, and 911 has always been a really progressive show. One of the other main couples of the show, Hen and Karen, are a lesbian couple and have been since season 1. They have featured various gay relationships and characters on the show and always have. In season 7, Buck came out as bisexual and was literally dating another man for a couple episodes. So what gives? They're not afraid to feature LGBT plus stories and characters, and one of the characters of the ship is literally queer. Some of the creators and writers of 911 were also creators and writers of Glee, who also had many gay ships and characters in it. From what I can tell, there is literally no real reason they haven't paired these two together. Like, I can't think of a legitimate reason. The only thing that might come to mind is if they're not making them a couple on the show now, just so that they can keep the will they, won't they thing going on until near the end of the show to keep shipper viewers engaged and tuning in with the show each week. But I just don't know about that because if they wanted to keep the shippers engaged with the show, I feel like it would just be easier to have them be a couple so shippers could actually watch them be together. I don't really know about this one. I also feel like keeping this going for so long has actually upset more shippers than kept them interested in the show. No other relationship in 911 is a slow burn like BUDDIE's is. If that's even the intention that they were going for there, I don't really feel like it makes sense. I have seen some people, especially on the Reddit, say that they feel as though they've waited this long before perhaps making the ship canon, as they've introduced both Buck and Eddie as being straight, so they really need to build up the connection before putting them together. And that might have made sense a few years ago, like in season 3 or 4 or even season 5, but it's season 8 now, and I think that's a bit too long of building a connection if that's what they were going for. I know some people rationalize the writers' unwillingness to make them canon is due to the Buddie fandom maybe being a smaller subsect of the 911 general viewership. This is a cable show and a lot of older people are the main viewers of a lot of cable shows, but from the fandom I've seen online and a lot of the people who talk about the show on Reddit, Twitter, Tumblr, there definitely is a sizable enough amount of viewers who are younger people or people involved in fandom. But maybe even within the fandom viewership, the writers might fear general audiences might not respond well to them together. I guess I sort of understand this point, but if I am being completely honest, maybe I only think this way as somebody who has always been super liberal and progressive, and maybe I'm not fully seeing the other side, but I've always thought that if you're okay watching a show where one of the other main couples are a lesbian couple, you see Buck already being bisexual, and there are various other queer romances in the show, I don't understand how they worry some people might get turned off from the show just from Buck and Eddie being together. Like, if you've already accepted all the other stuff that the show does, I don't really understand why this would be a problem. Again, it might just be because I'm super progressive and I would never see an issue with queer couples. But like, do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, why would Buck and Eddie be like the thing that stops you from watching the show if you're completely okay with everything else? This just might be my perspective as somebody who does not regularly talk to conservative-minded people, because I can't imagine anybody in my life being turned off from a show that already did all of this progressive stuff. Even both of my parents, who are nearly 60, would probably not care if their procedural drama had a gay couple in it. But then again, that's just my own experience, and maybe I'm not good at understanding how some people decide what's okay and what they're okay with seeing on their television screen and what isn't okay. As the show goes on longer and longer, I'm slowly starting to doubt that they'll ever actually go through with Buddie. I would totally love for it to happen, even though, again, Buddie wouldn't even be my favorite ship on the show, but I still think that it just makes sense to happen, as it's really the only romantic relationship that I really feel makes sense for Buck and Eddie's character at this point. But I'm not the one writing the show. I think the showrunners just need to be clearer with their intent instead of being vague and low-key queerbaiting with some of the Buddie scenes they've produced. Just say that you're gonna make it canon if you are, and if you're not gonna make it canon, honestly, just say so. Just say.